Imagine this. You're a dedicated soccer player, training really hard, putting in all the hours. You feel ready for match day, but then maybe you find yourself on the bench. Or maybe you don't even make the squad that week. What happens then? To all that peak physical fitness you've worked so hard to build, does it just, fade away? Today, we're diving deep into a really fascinating study that tackles exactly this question for soccer players. Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission, as always, is to unpack complex info and just give you the most important nuggets of knowledge. Today, we're focusing on keeping athletes right at their physical peak, even if they aren't getting regular minutes on the field, keeping them match ready.
Yeah, and we're digging into a very recent, very insightful study. It's titled Using Game-Based Compensatory Strategies in Non-Starter Soccer Players, Analyzing the Impact on Physical Fitness Development. Oh, the authors are TongZheng Liu, Mingbang Li, and XiaoYan Ku. And it's published in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine, Volume 24. So this is pretty current stuff, published online just this past September 1st, 2025.
Okay, so let's go back to that player on the bench scenario. What does the science actually say is happening? Physically, I mean.
Well, what's really interesting here is the problem itself is pretty well established. Non-starter players, so those who either don't play at all or maybe play less than about 15 minutes in a match, they often see a significant decline in really crucial physical fitness markers compared to their teammates who start regularly.
Wow. So it's not just about feeling left out, it's actual measurable physical decline.
Exactly. It's about capacity.
So why? What does the research point to as the reason for this drop-off?
Well, the research pretty consistently shows that playing in official matches is key. It seems to be really important for maintaining and even enhancing physical fitness. There are studies showing starters who log significant minutes, say over 1,000 minutes. They often show big improvements across loads of physical variables. Meanwhile, the non-starters might actually decline. And it often comes down to training load. Non-starters tend to have lower weekly loads, especially less high-intensity work. Plus, they just don't get exposed to those really intense efforts that happen again and again in a real match. So over time, this gap can really impact their physical abilities.
Right, that makes sense. But it raises a really important question then. If match time is that critical, how do you keep the players who aren't getting those minutes sharp? How do you keep them ready to go? But maybe before we get to the solution, why is this fitness stuff aerobic and anaerobic capacity? Why is it so vital in soccer anyway? What does it actually mean for a player on the field?
Yeah, good question. If we look at the bigger picture, having high aerobic capacity, it's absolutely essential. It's what lets players maintain a high work rate throughout the game. It means covering more distance, making more sprints. It's like the engine's endurance. There's even evidence it helps protect against injuries, especially when workloads suddenly change. And for younger players, it's really fundamental for performance.
Okay, so that's the endurance part. What about the other side? Anaerobic.
Right, anaerobic power. That's all about those short, explosive bursts. Think quick sprints, jumping, tackling. It really influences performance, obviously, but also injury risk in pros and younger elite players, too. It's directly linked to what we call repeated sprint ability, being able to sprint, recover slightly, and go again and again, like chasing down a ball, making a run. So while aerobic fitness helps you last the 90 minutes, anaerobic power helps you win those decisive moments. You really can't succeed at a high level without both. They're non-negotiable.
Okay, definitely sounds like a major challenge then, this fitness decline for non-starters. So what's been tried before to fix it? And where did this particular study fit in?
Well, a lot of the research on these compensatory strategies, basically, ways to make up for that lost match time, it's been a bit limited. Often just observational or not directly comparing methods. So this study, the one we're looking at, it really aimed to fill that gap. They directly compared a game-based compensatory strategy against, well, not having one. They wanted to see the actual impact on aerobic fitness and that repeated sprint ability we just talked about.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting for me. How did they actually test this? What did the experiment look like?
They used a pretty clever design, actually, a controlled crossover experiment. It ran for 12 weeks, right in the middle of the competitive season. And crossover means every player involved got to experience both conditions. So they had a period with no extra compensation and a period with the compensatory training.
Ah, so they acted as their own controls, in a way.
Exactly. They had 2 4-week intervention phases. And crucially, in between those phases, there was a 2-week washout period.
Washout, to let any effects wear off.
Precisely. To make sure the effects from the first phase didn't just carry over and influence the results of the second phase. It makes the comparison cleaner. They had 19 male non-starter players involved. Average age about 18, so under 19s playing at a regional level. And these were guys specifically chosen because they consistently got less than 15 minutes of match time during the study. So the perfect group to test this on.
Okay, 19 players, crossover design. So what did this compensatory strategy actually involve? What extra work did they do?
So the day after a match, the players who didn't play much less than 15 minutes, they did some extra training. And it wasn't just running laps. It was very specific. 6 bouts of 2 versus 2 small-sided games. Each bout lasted 3 minutes with a 2-minute rest in between. So about 18 minutes of actual exercise time in total.
2v2. That sounds intense on a small pitch.
Oh, absolutely. They played on small pitches, just 2 by 1 meters marked out inside a larger 25 by 15 meter area. And the target intensity was high. They aimed for an RPE rate of perceived exertion of 8 or 9 on the board scale.
8 or 9. That's like feeling you're working very hard to extremely hard.
Exactly. The goal was to simulate that high intensity you get in parts of a real match.
Oh, okay, intense stuff. And how did they measure if it was actually working? What fitness tests did they use?
They used 2 well-established tests. For aerobic endurance and that ability to handle high-intensity intermittent work, they used the Yo-Yo Intermittent Recovery Test Level 1. You probably know it as the YERT or just the Yo-Yo test.
Yeah, the shuttle run one that gets progressively harder.
That's the one. Lots of running back and forth at increasing speeds with short active recovery breaks. Really pushes your aerobic system. And then for repeated sprintability, they use the running-based anaerobic sprint test, often called the RST. They calculate the mean time over several sprints, so it's usually referred to as RSAMian. And they did these tests at the very start, so baseline. Then again, after the first 4-week block and the washout period, that's the mid-assessment, and then one final time at the very end.
Okay, so after all that setup, the crossover, the intense 2v2 games, the testing, what did they actually find? Did these small-sided games make a real difference?
Oh, yeah. The results were pretty clear, actually, quite significant. This study reported what they call large effects. Basically, strong evidence that the compensatory strategy, the extra 2v2 games, led to better results than not doing them. And that was true for both the yo-yo test and the RSAMian.
Better results. Can you give us a bit more detail? Like, what happened with the yo-yo test scores, the aerobic endurance?
Sure. For the yo-yo test, the players using the compensatory strategy, the CS group, performed significantly better than when they were in the non-compensatory strategy, or NCS phase. This was true at both the midpoint assessment and the final post-assessment. At the midpoint, the average difference was about 84 meters further in the test, which is, well, quite a lot in the yo-yo test.
84 meters. That sounds substantial.
It is. And it was statistically significant, meaning it's very unlikely to be just a fluke. At the end, the difference was still significant, around 65 meters. So in practical terms, players doing the extra games either maintained their aerobic fitness or even improved it slightly. But when they didn't get that compensation, they showed significant declines. They actually gave an example. One group started with the CS and switched to NCS, and their yo-yo score dropped by an average of 78 meters in that second phase.
Wow, okay. So a clear benefit for aerobic fitness. What about the anaerobic side? The repeated sprints, the RSAMian?
Similar story there, just. Yeah. Remember, for RSAMian, a lower time is better, meaning faster sprints. And again, the compensatory strategy resulted in significantly lower, so faster, RSAMian times compared to the non-compensatory strategy, both at the midpoint and the end.
So it helped maintain that explosive power, too.
It seems so. It suggests the CS was effective in maintaining, maybe even improving, anaerobic performance, and definitely preventing those declines they saw without the extra work. And this kind of makes sense, right? We know that 2v2 games, especially on small pitches, they naturally involve lots of short, intense action sprints, changes of direction, accelerations, decelerations.
Yeah, you're constantly involved.
Exactly. Other research has shown these formats produce high heart rates, high lactate levels, which is great for stimulating aerobic fitness. And for the anaerobic side, those repeated intense bursts are perfect for stimulating the anaerobic pathways, helping maintain or improve that kind of power.
This is really compelling evidence. So translating this science into practice, what does this mean for coaches out there, for players?
Well, the findings point towards a pretty practical implication, I think. Adding some form of game-based compensatory training, like this 2v2 format, maybe just once a week, either on match day itself, for those who didn't play, or maybe the day after. It seems like it can be really effective. Effective in maintaining or even improving both aerobic capacity and repeated sprint performance in those non-starter players.
Yeah.
It helps bridge that gap, that performance gap we talked about that comes from just not getting enough match exposure. It keeps them physically ready.
It sounds like a really positive, actionable strategy, but like with any study, were there any caveats, any limitations we should keep in mind?
Oh, absolutely. And the researchers are upfront about them, which is good science. First, the sample size, 19 players.
Hmm.
It's decent for this kind of controlled study, but it's still relatively small. So we need to be a little cautious about generalizing these findings to all non-starter players everywhere. Also, the duration was quite short, just those 2 4-week intervention blocks. We don't know for sure if these benefits would hold up over an entire long, grueling season. Would players adapt? Would they need changes?
Good points. So longer studies with more players would be helpful.
Definitely. Future research should probably look at larger, maybe more diverse groups, different age levels, maybe female players too, and definitely track them over longer periods. It would also be great to see a wider range of physiological measures, maybe delve deeper into the mechanisms. And one really critical point to make, the study showed improvements in physical fitness measures the yo-yo test, the RSA mean. That's important. But that doesn't automatically guarantee better performance in an actual match.
Right. Fitness is one piece, but not the whole puzzle.
Exactly. Match performance is way more complex. Tactics, decision-making, technical skill, psychology, they all play a huge role. This strategy helps keep the physical engine tuned, keeps them ready, but it doesn't magically make them a better overall player overnight.
That's a really important distinction. Okay, so let's try and sum up our deep dive then. It seems this study gives us some pretty strong evidence, wouldn't you say, that these game-based compensatory strategies, specifically using something like 2v2 small-sided games, they really are effective. Effective at maintaining that crucial aerobic and anaerobic fitness for soccer players who aren't getting regular game time. It shows how targeted extra work can fight off that physical decline.
Yeah, I think that's a fair summary. It's a clear demonstration that you can mitigate some of those negative effects of limited playing time and help keep players physically prepared.
So maybe a final thought to leave our listeners with. What does this suggest about the future? Maybe about personalized training in sports? Could these ideas, targeted game-specific compensation, could they be used beyond soccer for athletes in other team sports who find themselves on the sidelines, or maybe even for, regular folks just looking to optimize their own fitness with really specific, short, high-intensity workouts? Something to think about.
Definitely food for thought. The principles could potentially apply much more widely.
We really encourage you, if this sparked your interest, to read the full article. Again, it's by TongZheng Liu, Mingbang Li, and XiaoYan in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine. You can explore all the methodology and data for yourself. And if you found this deep dive valuable, please do make sure you follow our channel, turn on those notifications too. That way you won't miss out on similar content. We aim to keep you well informed, quickly, and thoroughly. Thanks so much for joining us today on The Deep Dive.